Welcome back, punters, to part 2 of the Punters Academy. First round of questions coming from Owen, who's an Axis client. Owen's a regular contributor, and we appreciate the thought that goes into the questions, and keep them coming. So first of all, he said, I've got a few questions for the show. I'm interested to hear your thoughts on a few horses. What's your view of Menari going forward to the 1400 metres in the Golden Rose? Do you think it can hold this level of performance up in distance? Do you think it could improve, or are you concerned about the horse having to produce such good performance ratings 3 times in a row? I suppose I'll start, and then John can give his take. I wouldn't be that concerned about going to 1400.
Menari? I've never heard of Menari. Go on, right, you go.
You got me there. Okay. So, look, I'm not concerned about Menari going to 1400. It did have that one trip over 1400 metres when it sat wide without cover. The inside section of the track played really advantageously that day.
It was heavy 10 too, wasn't it?
It was a wet track, yeah. But the inside was on fire.
Yeah, correct. That was the day the rail revived, from the Randwick rail revived.
Yeah, the famous
the second coming. Yeah, exactly. That's it.
Look, so on that basis, I wouldn't be overly concerned at getting 1400. It's obviously extremely competitive. It's at the top of its game. It's produced genuine Group 1 figures in both its last 2 runs. I do suspect, though, that the 1200 metre rating or peak performances that it managed to achieve will probably be its best. So I don't think it will be as good over 1400, but I can't.
But it doesn't. You don't need. It might not have to be.
Or against the competition.
Yes.
You look at what else is around. I mean, we'll digest these. Get into these races.
The races later. More, yeah. No, these questions sort of go further down. I've insight from like talking to Josh and talking to others that have sort of had anything to do with the horse. They all have that suspect because of last preparation. Josh wasn't on it then, but man, I can't see anything that says that horse. The only way I could see it not running 14 is if it drew like 8-1 and got bottled up and over racing, because he does get a little bit keen. But if he's got room, like on a hard track, I wouldn't imagine over 1400. If he sat 3 wide, I wouldn't be worried about him running 1400. He just looks his action just looks so fluent, and I've seen a lot weaker looking horses in 3-year-old grade run 1400, and win big races.
Yeah. So
I just can't see.
You can't.
I can't see any weaknesses there. He doesn't do anything. He doesn't not attack the line. He's run through the line those last 2 runs.
Those sectionals late too. If you
no
look at the splits, there's no weakness in any of those splits late. So
it's really hard. I don't really get it why people are saying he won't run 14. If it's just that one run last preparation at the end of a long hard prep where he'd had to be up for quite a long time, there's just nothing more could have been against him that day. And if you're ever going to forgive a run, it's that. If you put a line through that, I don't see why there's any argument in the world to say that he doesn't run 1400 metres or won't run it. He obviously hasn't yet, but I don't see any weaknesses.
Okay, so that's that horse. Pariah, third up at 1400 in the Golden Rose, query? Question mark, that's really what you're asking. There seems to be contrasting views. Some are arguing he's not a 1400 metre horse, while others contend that the Snowdens will have him spot on for the grand final. My opinion, the horse had its chance to beat Menari. It's that length and a half, 2 lengths behind that horse, and that's probably my view going forward.
If you had I'm not going to quote the Vince Accardi, but if you saw the old that position where you'd want a horse to be in that race, the way it was run, on the back of Menari is where you wanted to be. If anyone had a harder run, it was Menari, even though he didn't have a tough run, but he had to cut Pariah up. He wouldn't have gone past him another lap.
Yeah, I don't think so.
I find it really difficult to say that he's got more improvement in him than Menari. I do, again, I do talk to people around both horses, and they're confident he'll run it, but to me, he has a lot more chinks in his armour than Menari. I think Menari's attacked the line better than him both times. Even first up, I expected Pariah to kind of run away from them a bit better than he did, and there were horses closing. Whereas this time,
if you reprice that race Saturday with those 2 horses, 2-horse race,
it's nearly. If you're not 2s on Menari or something like the way.
I was going to say 6-4 on the.
Yeah. It's just hard to say. And how can conditions favour Pariah for him to beat him?
That's the thing, isn't it?
Even
unless Menari fails.
Yeah, unless Menari fails, or probably gate one's his biggest thing, and I think if he draws gate one, he jams him out and he leads over 1400 and try and catch me. Like, there's just no weakness to this.
Yeah, I think so, and yeah, that's
I don't know, and I assume he's going to run there. It's $1 million colt race, a colt making race. Pariah's obviously a potential stallion. I think he lines up, but I wouldn't be surprised if he wasn't there.
You couldn't back him to beat.
Well, I wouldn't be surprised if Harron just said, "Listen, Everest," and attack that, or let's try and find another Group 1 3-year-old over the 1200 and dodge Menari. It would not surprise me, just because of how dominant he was over him the other day.
What are your views on horses such as Gold Standard and Sanctioned? I thought Gold Standard is a nice horse. I mean, it's improving all the time. Did a good job Saturday. It's really progressed, and who's to say it won't be in the mix? But the horse that I don't think you would be sacking is Menari. You can't sack it off that run.
Well, it's the one horse out of the Pariah race that can improve significantly. Like, I don't know whether they might even have blinkers up their sleeve with him second up 1400. The way James trains. He's the one that was
upping distance with blinkers,
and he sort of jammed him out a bit there on Saturday, and then grabbed him and took him back, and then was strong late. So he's all upping distance. I just it's just a theory. I just think that wouldn't surprise me if they threw them at them, thinking that they have to get a little bit extra out to run Menari down.
I would be thinking that Menari is got a better chance of progressing than Pariah.
1,000,000%. Yes. Yeah. I think he's the one. I'm not bagging Pariah as a horse in any way, shape or form. I just don't think this is his race. Whereas I think there's a couple of others that can improve to be dangers. And if you get exactly what you're saying, if you had to nail me down to a danger, Pariah wouldn't enter my brain.
Yeah. Well, having run the 1500 is what Owen's saying.
Yeah, so
is it now a major play for the Golden Race? So we're talking about Gold Standard.
The way I do form, I'd much rather see a 3-year-old coming off a 1500 metre run back to a 14. Than going from 12 to 14. There's no doubt about that, because you expect it's going to be a high pressure race. Like Prast or someone similar is going to be in there to set a good tempo again. The issue with Gold Standard is I think his 5th run first preparation, going back in distance.
Gay.
He's gay, but he's been up a long time. He's not.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
5th run first prep, gay. Is that a worry?
Well, it's not
ideal.
If you put a line with him with addictive nature, he went up. Saturday, he hit the wall. He was 4th run first preparation, going up. I think he was 13 to 14, I think.
I think it depends on the trainer, though, isn't it?
Well, it does, but it's still a horse in its first preparation. There's only so much they can do.
Yeah.
Gay obviously conditions them hard as anyone.
Bart Cummings or James Cummings is a totally different...
I don't think they'd be lining up if they were in that state.
No, they probably wouldn't, but they're a different type of trainer. And
they can keep stepping, whereas you could see Gold Standard. Like, I thought, I was only at home, but watching him parade, he looked unbelievable. He was like glowing. You would have put him in the dark and he would have stood out like a beacon. He was crazy how well he looked. So he's obviously thriving on the racing.
Have something on, John?
Well, I thought after they put the markets back up, it was 6 to 4 Menari, $15 Gold Standard. I was like, well, what $5 a place? I was like, what the hell's going on here? Like, did they not just see this horse run through the line over 1500? And I know the time wasn't probably super duper, but he's going to run it. He's going to be on the speed, and he's going to be tough. You know, he really has to go backwards a long way to not run well. I'm not saying that he's a certainty. Whereas Sanctioned sort of threw up a little bit of a red flag for that race, but for me, like it pulled pretty hard early in the race. Got well back out of its ground, and it was probably the strongest on the line, along with what was Ace High, I think, which was David Payne's horse. And I think Timmy's horse dead set failed. I think it was just tied and really got tied the last 100. So he got an even money favourite dropping out of the race the last 100 metres. So if you take him out of the race, you say that Gold Standard's had every possible chance up on the speed and kicked and run well, but not run great time compared to the other race.
You wouldn't say he'd be the likely type of horse to trouble Menari. He wouldn't be.
I reckon he's a horse that box seats and runs really well, and $5 a place is a huge price. But I'm not chiming into $6 or $7 to win about him, thinking that he's. I think he's going to be there and tough to beat. I think Sanctioned's going to be out the back and run on, and I think there was just a few warning signs.
That was one of the questions. I suppose here is, could Sanctioned be a Golden Road contender, or would races like the Spring Champion and VRC Derby be more realistic targets? Probably.
If Gold Standard got to a Spring Champion, I think that's a more. I'd rather see him go 15, 18 or whatever it is, 2000. I'm not sure what it is now. The spring champion. But I'd rather see him progress to that race than drop back to a 14 here. And I think they're both spring champion Derby horses more than Golden Rose. And it was just the warning signs in that race, a few little things that scared me off wanting to. I probably went off a bit quick with thinking Gold Standard was a really realistic chance. I still think it is. It's probably $10 chance or something like that in a Golden Rose if they ran it in 2 weeks and everything went normal. But I'd be more thinking definitely Sanctions needs a lot more ground.
5 for 2 to place, 10 to place.
That's right. So 9 to 2 or whatever they were betting at $5 was big odds.
8% advantage.
Yeah, and I think it's a much better place. Hope when you get horses that are probably. You find them quite a bit. I do where you think they're a 6 to 4 chance to win, 20 to 1 chance. 6 to 4 chance to place, 20 to 1 chance to win. It just seems to be. They don't have the ability to probably beat a horse or two, but they're going to be in the right spot, have all the conditions in their favour, and run well.
Okay, so Owen, thanks for all that. The next raft of questions here is from Michael. Hi, Paul and John. I enjoyed the show. Thanks for helping punters. I really struggle to correctly assess horses stepping back in trip from their previous start. Can you share your approach on doing that? I follow many Brisbane races. There's some recent examples. So we'll go into the examples in a sec. Back in distance, up in distance, it's just another factor to consider. It's all very much dependent on the platform, or the runs that the horse has had, where it's going, who trains it, who's riding it, what type of setup it's going to get, where it's going to be on the map. There's no just hard and fast rule that you can say, this is how I treat horses back in
sprinters, I think just a couple of keys I look at. Say a horse that's a 11 or 1200 metre horse, or 1100 back to 1000. I don't like to go. I think there's a big difference between a 12 and 1000 compared to 11 and 1000. If you know what I'm saying. And a 12 to 11's okay, but a 12 to 1000's too big a step. So if a horse has had a really tough setup run off an 1100 and it's coming back to 1000, I'll really try and look for that horse as much as possible back in 1000, because it could probably do work or do things wrong and still be strong over 1000. Same from a 12 back to 11. If they've got a really good platform from that 1200, they're going to be they can work quite hard in 11, because that's what basically sprint races are all about to me. If you can work hard, be on speed, and you're going to be there in the finish. So if you can find horses like that, whereas when it gets out to up and back in distance, as you're saying, there's 1,000 different rules. I think sprint races, if you can find a horse that's had a really testing run over a little bit further and coming back, you can expect them to overcome trouble in their next start and still win.
And had days off required.
That obviously comes into what stage they are in their preparation. So that those rules are a little bit more difficult to get into. But I found a horse. There's a horse called I'm a Jet that you could look up that ran well 2 starts ago, sat really wide, then came back in distance the other day at Ballina, had a few things go wrong and still win. And it's a really good example for a horse that I try to look for leading up to they're ready to peak in that distance, or if they go back a little bit. You can deal with the runs, because I haven't looked at them.
So Captain Leo was the first horse you mentioned, Michael. Basically 1100 metres back to 1000 metres, beaten 0.4 of a length at Ipswich, started favourite at its last 4 starts, won 2 of them. I wouldn't call that a failure.
Is that a Curry horse?
It might be.
Captain Leo, I'm not sure.
It ran a rating almost identical to what he did winning at Toowoomba by 5.3 lengths 3 starts back. So the 1100 back to the 1000 wouldn't have been a concern for me, and I don't necessarily call being beaten 0.4 of a length a failure.
Especially if it's run similar. Yeah, it might look worse on paper.
Yeah, it's within about 0.4 or so, I think. So roughly 0.2, 0.3 of a length, if that, in terms of difference in rating. So I won't really classify that as being one of those horses. Royal Myth was 1050 back to 900, which is always sometimes...
That's close to the edge of...
It's close to the edge.
Yeah.
I haven't assessed that race. This was at the Gold Coast on Saturday. On face value, though, if you just looked at the form and you'd say, okay, 1 over 870, 860, and 1100 metres previously, you probably wouldn't necessarily be all that concerned. But, it was the first time the horse had actually come back in trip. It had had a couple of preparations previously where it only had 3 runs. This was now its 4th run. Was it a throw at the stumps?
Yeah.
That was probably a little bit of, digging deeper into the form. It could have been a concern.
Interesting what you're saying, like sprint races, which is obviously what Michael's looking at as predominantly as well. Horses that do have pace and can get on the pace are the horses you probably want to concentrate in. If it's a back marker and it's 11 back to say, or 1,050 back to 900, that could be an absolute nightmare. And same with what I'm saying, sort of 11 back to 1,000 for most back markers. Anything back in trip for a back marker usually is trouble. Usually, unless they go from, say, a small field, slow pace to a big field, unless there's a lot of changes that are helping them. They really need a lot of help.
And that sort of maybe fits with Sicario, the next horse. It was a mile back to 1,400 at Caloundra yesterday off a 43-day break. So that wasn't a concern. The break and the 1,600 back to 1,400
fresher and
an issue.
Averages out.
The issue was the map and the likely tempo of where it was going to get to.
Okay.
So, you've got to look at the context of this argument that you're sort of trying to present regarding horses backing trip and how to handle them. As John said, back markers, backing trip, even with the
need
break,
more help.
Need a lot more help. Need a speed to.
Yeah, because a fitness platform doesn't help you make up ground against a slow tempo or anything like that. It helps you overcome faster tempos, if anything. Yes. So if you've got the attribute to get up there and be there, then fitness base will help you. But if you're out the back last and you've now got to run winks like sectionals to win, it doesn't matter how fit you are. So that's how it explains the easy way.
Seemingly no problem. Mashani Sloof last start, Mr. Epic 2 starts back Slapper 4 starts back. So Mashani Sloof was 21 days between runs. It wasn't suited at Doomben, 2 runs back over to 1350. Had a bad gate that day. The map wasn't ideal for it. And it settled around about 4 or 5 lengths off them on a track that day that was favouring on pace runners. So that was the problem for it. Saturday's race, when it was successful, was a much better setup. It had successfully dropped back in distance before this horse, and so the Saturday event that you were talking about, where it was back in trip, obviously was a much better setup for it.
Well, there's a lot of double tick because it's failed going up to that trip. It had things against it. It was coming back to it and doing something that it had succeeded at before. Yeah. It was better set up. So it's like, you want to tick. It was a pass mark in the previous race for whatever reason, whether it had excuses or ran well and had things against it, and then it goes into a race that's more suitable today, and it's already done it before. So it's got more ticks than another horse.
And that's something I look forward to. I mean, it's I don't know, John, do you? I mean...
Yeah, well, that's obviously a big positive. Yeah, if you've done it, it's a big positive, because, and it's a pattern that trainers you'll start to work out, hang on, the 1350 wasn't even he was just going around that day, and the next day, and so you start working out patterns with that horse. And you've seen where it was. He might have ridden it a bit further back or something, protected the horse a little bit more. Now you're looking for that horse to find the next start.
It just wasn't set up at Doomben, the previous start to do it.
And you know that they're looking for an ideal race. So, not all trainers can find the right race for a horse, but they're trying to. So what I'm saying is that 1350, if you're expecting to see it come back in distance, they've done everything they can to put it into a race. This is their day. So it's a positive, you know what I mean? Like it doesn't mean that they're right. You want to do all your own work to try and check out and make sure that you agree that today's the day, the price is right, everything's okay, but you've got to think that everything's lining up for those horses on those days too.
Mr. Epic, 2,040 metres back to 1,800. It had 2 weeks between runs. It mapped really well that day, got to the right part of the track at the Gold Coast, I think it was, and did the job. So once again, horse. It was... the horse is going well, and it got the job done that day, but I wouldn't have been concerned that 2,040 back to 1,800 with 14 days, and given to where it was likely going to be on the map, where it was going to get to, he rode it well and was able to get away with that race.
There was a horse in Sydney, like, I don't know, he was just saying 2,040 back to 18, that Allwood, where it was on Saturday. Yeah. So it was an interesting horse because it looked like a horse that was going on its way to 2,400 beyond, really lacks a gear, lacks a change of no acceleration, and he was back in distance similar to that. No break, but I think he was 2 weeks, was he 2,100 or 2,000 back to 18. He looked a nightmare.
Different scenario.
Yeah, totally different scenario. But this, like Mr. Epic's a horse that can overcome that.
Race up on speed and
correct. And he's got a bit of, he rolls and sort of puts them out of their comfort zone, which doesn't really matter if he's coming back in distance or not. It probably suits him a little bit, if anything. So there's, it just all depends on the horse's attributes.
Yeah,
Backslapper.
Backslapper was back from 1350. I don't think it's a 1350 metre horse. I backed it from memory when it won a maiden I won a race there, so it wasn't a maiden. I won a race over to 1350 at Ipswich, and it tracked up behind a leader, and admittedly the inside in the straight wasn't ideal that day, but he sort of got him out, and they walked in that race, so they went about, I don't know, 6-7 lengths below for the first section of the race, so that's not really indicative of the horse getting the trip. He was just able to sprint better than bad horses on the day, I think. So backslapper, yeah, when it was 1350 metres back and well supported, got the job done. It had track conditions to suit, it had a track pattern to suit, and obviously the 1200 metres I think is about as far as it really wants. So
yes.
From that point of view, I don't think that is an ominous sign.
Well, all the factors in here seem to be, what did it do its last start? Is there a reason for it coming back in distance? Will it be suited for whatever reason? Is it, does it find the right race its next start? Is it a better setup this time? So it's not a flat rule on back in distance.
It's all about the setup.
I love back in distance. It's probably one of my favourite things to find in a horse, but it has to stack up in its previous form. Is there a pattern for it to do this? Is there something in its last start that says it will be suited this time? Is this race much more suitable than last start? So it's not simply just back in distance. There's a lot of stuff that goes into it, and it's just you can't really just run a system of 12 back to 11. No, let's bet.
I mean, it could be that the horse is back in trip because they've freshened it up because it's had a setback. I mean, you've got to do a little bit more work. You've got to look into things like stewards reports.
I think it is a great angle, and it's worth exploring for anyone who does want to, because concentrating on horses that are back in distance and are finding a suitable race means usually they're got the fitness levels,
they're going to be strong
to run well. That's right, exactly. So it's a good system, but you've really got to work on your ability to know which horses are suited back in distance.
Yeah, it's all about the setup,
yes.
Michael. So you've got to, I think, deal with that. So there is no hard and fast rule, and we just take each case on its own merits. Next one is from Michael as well. The show's a good watch. Could you and John give us 3 horses to follow out of each episode, out of country provincial races that won well and races that rated well according to your figures, all states are fine?
How about we just put that up? I might send them through to you to share on Twitter or something like that maybe, because I'm not prepared for that question.
Yeah, and I haven't had a look at it, to be honest, and sometimes I don't know necessarily that I always want to do that.
Yeah, I'm much more giving with my things because I'm not a tight ass, so that's okay. Paul's a tight ass.
No, it all depends.
No, I understand what you're talking about.
What sort of races go?
Yeah, it's a hard question too, because you give out a horse to follow and then it doesn't find a right race next start.
Yeah,
it's much.
Exactly.
You look like a gig. You're on a hiding to nothing. But
that's right.
Promising horses that are coming through the grades, I'm happy to sort of share them. It's not as if it'll be rocket science, but I tend to sort of usually share horses that are either well hidden and have a bit of speculation about them, that I'm happy to say that's what sort of horse it is, or something that's done something really good. The facts have all been behind it to say it did what it did was real, and it should go on. They're the better horses to share, because pretty much wherever they go, they're going to run well.
Yeah, I mean the Metro stuff is obviously a talking point that a lot of listeners are keen on understanding, and especially as we get into the better races and so forth. So we'll be talking about
different lead-ups. The
country provincial stuff. Sometimes I feel like when I've got one out of there, you
want to keep it yourself, which is like we both have people that access our information, so it's only fair that we do that. So it's like as I was saying, probably the speculative ones are the ones I'd rather keep to myself.
Well, John, you've got the same information as I've got, and really
to start off with, absolutely.
If you've got our database, you can easily identify that yourself just by looking at the numbers.
Couldn't agree more, and that's where it saves me all the time in the world, is having to justify the facts behind the race. I don't have to do that myself anymore because I put my trust in you.
Thanks.
And it worked, and no complaints so far. It does. That's the main part.
Okay, so Michael, we'll do our best with that given the constraints. Okay, so we're going to talk about...
Quickly duck through some of these races.
We're going to duck through some of these races from Sydney and Melbourne on Saturday. We'll start off with the Stan Fox, which I think was race 4.
Yes.
Gold standard, continues to improve. Ran about 1.6 lengths below par. Rated well in front. Went along about a length slow to the 600, so the first 900 metres of the race, and did the job. And I don't know, it's a bomb-proof type horse.
That's what it
makes
is.
its own luck. But we did mention about the stage of preparation in its first prep, or how many runs it's had in its first prep.
Absolutely.
So maybe a little bit of caution going forward, but there's no reason to suggest that, it won't be a decent sort of horse.
Well, he looks
after a bit of a
consistent. He's a
break.
bomb-proof. He's Gay Waterhouse. He's a lovely horse, as in physically. There's no reason to drop off him, but as I was saying, like, if you go through the race, Gold Standard's had the nice run. He was very well ridden. He sort of led early in a slowish tempo. Then the horse has come around over race, given him cover. He's peeled off him and run away. They obviously haven't had any real testing parts to that race.
No.
But he's done everything you could possibly hope. He's had a little bit of the pattern in his favour. It wasn't a problem to be up there on the speed, obviously. It was a positive, if anything. Sanction was out the back. It's run on. The even money, or 5-4 favourite, has failed, in my opinion. It hasn't run up to its best.
Yep.
Trapeze Artist had the blinkers off, sat in behind.
Which pulls the race.
It pulls the race back.
Back a bit. So when I'm reviewing these races, and when I get the verified times, I'll be obviously taking that into consideration and if you like,
being a little bit harsh on the race.
shaving something on the race because of that.
And then you got Trapeze Artist went around $5, blinkers off. Gate 1 this time, just sort of took a sit and poked around. I don't think that was really his grand final, so there's another 20% that was there, but he was there to run well, obviously, but I don't think he was suited. Ace High's out the back, really didn't take part in the race and ran home well. Colesberg similar, and the Mission, who's another 10-1 chance that was first up in a 1500.
Needs a wet track.
It needs a wet track and needs about another 3 runs, so I don't know what the heck it was even doing there. So if you sort of...
At that price.
If you want to... Yeah, exactly. If they had to run really fast time, I probably would have been more lenient on the race, but because the time's not overly great and there's no real testing period in the race to really say the form's great, I'd be sceptical, and the winner's probably the one that I want to be more lenient of next up, but I don't want to follow anything out of this race and say it's ready to win.
Okay. Next race would be the Theo Marks, which is Deploy's effort, who ran the fastest overall time of the day relative to standard as well as on the clock. So it went 3.2 lengths above par for a typical Group 2 over the 1300 at Rose Hill. Great effort. This horse is just flying. He's now put together 2 consecutive ratings peaks. Markets underestimated him, to be quite honest, I think.
Especially the opening market. They kind of got it right by race time, but I think he started 288 Internet SP, so they've found him, but I think they bet $657 early in the week. So
he's really just been a find, this horse. Raced so well in Brisbane, and he's just such a great horse.
Hasn't lost in Sydney in 18 months.
Well, really?
His Sydney horse has not lost. The last time he lost, I think, was on a wet track behind Southern Legend. Has not lost a race in Sydney since.
Great horses to back these horses. They just put themselves into a race and make their own luck, and then they're just so competitive all the time. And so for me, I'm not saying it wasn't a bit of an advantage being what it was on the weekend, but the margin.
Still got to be the horse to do it.
The credit is where it is. So there's no reason why it won't continue to race really well.
Interesting talk with Josh about this, and what tells me his rides were good on Saturday were, if you break it down. Basically, this race they've run, 1 length slow, 1 length quick, come home 2 lengths quick. The Run to the Rose, they've gone out 1.5, come home 1.5, as in quick or whatever. And then what was the other race he was in? It was Gold Standard, where he sort of went a little bit slower there, knowing the Mission was a big chance to come around and want to set a quicker tempo. Stalked him, and again it was an even tempo. And what he said to me about these tracks, which was interesting, I haven't heard too many times, is these horses don't exert anywhere near amount of the energy on a hard, firm track as if they were on a testing or normal surface. So therefore, you're better off to go at a faster speed and try and really keep it as an even tempo, because then you're hurting the horses behind you that are chasing a faster tempo, but your horse is highballing and really doesn't exert the energy he normally would running these times.
Great excitement.
Exactly. It was nearly identical. He looked like he went 1,000 mile an hour, but he didn't. He went even the whole way through, and he just seems to be such a good raider of horses in front that he can exploit.
He's got a
his
good clock
horses
in his
best.
head.
He does, and he luckily, it's not as if the horses aren't doing a great job as well. They're hard fit, they're flying, but these even fast sections are what really make the horse, and this horse's ability to do that is what will stand him in great stead. I think he goes to Rupert Clark 1400, is it, in Melbourne next start?
Yeah.
He'll probably get a bit of weight relief there. I think 56.5, he'd be dangerous on that sort of level anyway. And him 1400 up on probably a wet track might hurt him a little bit up at 1400, but if you get a dry surface down there, he'll give him a nice hurry up, whatever he runs in. The second horse ran really well, Egg Tart.
Yeah. Well, clearly wasn't ready. The betting told us late.
Well, the betting was just wrong early. It was just crazy, like 7-4 a horse. If you sort of compare in that race, the Theo Marks,
Yep.
Egg Tart sort of profiles very similarly to what Ome Saw did a few weeks ago in the Deploy race, where he sort of sat fourth and won there. And for her to come up shorter odds than Ome Saw kind of didn't make sense, because Ome Saw had form over shorter.
Yes.
Egg Tart's coming back off a mile and a half. I think everyone sort of compared it to Winks because she'd won a Theo Marks 2 years ago. If anyone ever saw that win, it was probably one of the best wins I've ever seen in my life. And Egg Tart is not Winks. She may be at some point or whatever, but she's not at the moment. She doesn't profile anything like her. She was much, more developed as a horse than Winks, and that was her platform to Cox Plates and all sorts of things. And I think Egg Tart's on the way to running well in an Epsom or something like that. But there were good runs in this race. I'd prefer the form. Like obviously their run time, they were tested. Dixie Blossoms chased the speed. She ran really well. Egg Tart ran well. Euro Angel closed from the back. It had
Dixie
a bit of
Blossoms
fitness.
can find the right race, can't it?
It can for sure. Yeah, it can. If bloody Ronnie, he's sort of had to back off these horses a bit for whatever reason. There's a lot of speculation there, but we'll let the stewards deal with that as well.
We got Corey on Dixie Blossoms.
Corey on Dixie Blossoms. He's the new rider for that. It's that sort of run.
He has an affinity with the horse.
He does now. He does. And he's got, Timmy got sacked off. You don't know what the story was there.
I seem to remember a race there where Timmy was on Dixie Blossoms.
He sat 4 wide in a Group 1, and now the owner doesn't like him anymore, and that's fine.
Wonder how he got there so easy.
Who? When he led on it. He led and won a big race on Dixie Blossoms one day when he won with 6, and then he got beat the next start.
Very well back that day.
Yes, very well back that day, and that was he just went straight to the front. It can run well off that. Sorry, and then it's probably the one that can springboard because it chased that tempo, and that's not its go. So the horses that were not suited there were Dixie Blossoms and Canny Esset chasing that fast speed. Next.
Okay, next, Shirako. Just a quick note, Ravi obviously returned well, pinged the gates, which was a good sign, and then Kieran just rode it perfectly, I thought. Just the horse come back.
I'm sick of saying to myself, how good is this guy riding? It's really driving me insane. I've been sceptical of him over the years, but he's really matured the last 12 months, and he used to be a bit of a carnival rider, and now he's riding into the carnival. This is a carnival race, but he's riding like this day in, day out.
A new personal best on performance ratings first up for Ravi, but certainly not in terms of overall time ratings. It can go better, and it's probably in for a decent campaign. Nothing special on the clock though Saturday, about 0.7 of a length overall, slow. And they went out a couple of lengths slow to the 600, so the first section of that race, or first half of the race, they went pretty moderately. So good training performance there.
The race contained a few warning signs for me, like as in you're saying the time wasn't great. I thought, like Perazada coming out of midweek forms, run second. Third horse was a bit unlucky. The fourth horse is an 1100 metre horse for mine. There's just a few queries over the race. I thought Ravi was dominant, and if she can settle, that sort of position in any
what I'm saying is that she's got the capability.
She does, 100%. But I'm just worried about the race.
Yep, fair enough.
Yeah.
Run to the Rose. Well, Menari, obviously terrific, recording a provisional WQR of what it did first up, winning. So it's flying. Pariah had its chance. We talked about that. Don't sack Menari off the run. It's the one that could be dangerous. Yes. Potentially, if it gets conditions to suit and comes on. As you say, there could be a bit of a gear change up the sleeve.
Yeah, well, it's going to improve naturally. If there is a gear change, that's probably another sign that they're just going to try and really tune him right up for that race.
So that's Menari, and we've talked about that.
Shogun Sun was an interesting run there, but he was suited. Late. He was good late, but he was suited as much as anything in that race. He's got a strong fitness base behind him. He's already got, I think, 3 runs at least. Back up to 14 suited. It was 12. Back up to 12 suited him, but he did run well and can be a little knockout. I don't think he's up to the top couple.
Needs the conditions to suit.
He needs everything to go his way. He needs to draw the gate and things against other tough horses in the market.
So that's the review of Sydney's races on Saturday. We'll talk about Melbourne. Russian Revolution and the McEwen ran the fastest overall time of the day, 3.8 lengths fast on par. So that's obviously the standard time for the Group 2 weight for age at 1,000 metres Moonee Valley. Houston sat 3 wide the entire trip, did a good job.
That was weird.
never really looked to be comfortable, never really looked to be travelling.
I don't think he dug her out. I don't know what he was doing. I think they said that he said he didn't have the pace, but I didn't think he even tried to show any pace. I thought she was going to get beat 10 around the turn, and I can't sack her. I'm a big query on the horse overall, but probably ran better than I thought it possibly could, and its last 100 metres was the best, and I expected it to be its worst, so...
Did a terrific job, so don't sack it.
Not yet, no.
Not at all. The Atlantic Duel, that was Shoal's race, overall slowest of the day. They absolutely walked for the first 600 metres.
Great ride on Shoal's.
Yeah, terrific ride. Did the job. I mean, as I said, slow time. I mean, they 3.7 lengths below par. So, but they, slow for section 2, so you can't sort of...
And they didn't rip home. That's the problem with that. You really want to see them attacking the line if they're going to go that slow in that class of race.
In that grade, you expect them to, and they haven't. So for me, there's a whole question mark.
Yeah, they've run the fastest relative, but they've not run significantly faster than races with a similar tempo or much faster tempos.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. So for me, query on that race.
Yes.
The Dardo Star Exhibit lost the rider at the start, so that mars the race a little bit. There was some horses that didn't seem to be comfortable going around it, and it was a bit there. And look, it's won the race. The riderless horse, I should say.
Yeah, it won the race.
Has won the race, so the time's going to be wrong.
Does that mess up the automatic timing system? Or?
Well, I think it will. I mean,
okay.
I wouldn't, unless someone manually corrects it. But
yeah.
About 1.2 links, it finished ahead of the actual winner of the race, Bonneval, who obviously won the
Huge
Oaks.
raps on this horse that it's like Caulfield Cup all over, all sort of things I see after. I honestly haven't looked at the race that closely just yet, but
they went out fast, and it suited, and they came home about 6 lengths slow, so really suited any horse running on. Look, Abbey Marie and Bonneval both registered new peaks, which obviously tells me the time's wrong too.
Yes.
And we'll get that sorted early in the week here, but even shaving the race. For that fact, Abbey Marie is still a horse that's improved.
Yeah, it looked like a superstar its first few runs. So I'm not surprised to see it returning to a good level.
But look, overall time wasn't.
The last horse, which we isn't in there, I'm just seeing the name of it. This horse Stampede, I might have had a nibble at it at $375 a place for the Melbourne Cup. He's a very interesting horse, and he was dominant there the other day. Filthy, they bet $9, and I didn't see it.
Won a race up here in the Carnival in Brisbane, and after winning at Wagga, I think, in one.
Yeah, so I went there and beat that horse, Life Less Ordinary, which is another little out wide for the Melbourne Cup sort of preview. I think they'll both be heading in that direction.
We're not into the futures markets, are we?
Well, they're not in the futures markets, but I just think I think he's still around 100 to the Melbourne Cup, and he's a tough on pace sort of horse that will be targeting that sort of race. So I'd just be having a look at him. What I sort of pulled out of most of the Melbourne race is that I think the Sydney horses are going to come down there and give them a bit of a fright. I didn't see too exciting, especially in the 3-year-olds.
Well, Vega Magic's, in terms of the Group 1 sprinters, is flying.
He's the one, and if he doesn't measure up, they're in a lot of trouble.
Yeah, that's right.
Because Russian Revolution was just dominant over those horses, and I'm not saying it was a super strong McEwen, but
what did you think of Braves? Did you have a look at Brave Smash?
I did, and I got a bit of a conversation going with Luke Murrell, because he just sort of was a bit defensive about how the horse went, and I think a few people had said it was disappointing, and I just wanted to ask him why he believed that. And what was interesting, what my issue with the horse, and I loved its first run, but it didn't hit the line there. Its fitness, it had to make quite a run to run down a Vega Magic, who's obviously a top horse.
Could it have been a little flat second up?
Could have been flat second up. It did race a little bit out of its pattern, but they didn't go hard. If they had have gone hard and it had to race out of pattern, I would have been much more forgiving of it.
They went 2 lengths slow, by the way, for the first 600.
For the first 6, so he's not had to really absorb too much pressure, and I expected him to run through the line this time. And if he wasn't flat, it is a worry for me. I thought Luke did say that if you watch it very closely, he thought it saw something, and its head carriage changed in its ears or something. I've had a pretty close look at it and couldn't see too much. I'm not saying he's incorrect at all, but I just concerned that the horse doesn't rip through the line like a horse that I want to see heading towards an Everest coming out of a race of that nature.
Look, overall the time was marginal, 0.2 above par, and so, considering the moderate early tempo, it wasn't too bad a job, but
correct.
Nothing to write home about.
No, nothing to compare it to Russian Revolution, Red Zell, Vega Magic's last run.
Russian Revolution's really improved. I mean, that horse obviously showed terrific form last preparation, but geez, it was thrown in at the weights in some of those races.
Yeah, exactly, and he's obviously come back. Like the confidence that stable was exuding before that race was incredible. They were just basically saying it was a put in take out job, and they were correct. But you got to be careful, obviously, of the 1,000 metre form going to the 1,200 of the Everest, and that's why you want to find a horse like Brave Smash who can just sit in behind and really attack the line. But if you saw the Vega Magic race, he looked like he was going to get him at the 150.
For me, Vega Magic would be favourite.
Right now, yes.
Redzel, flying.
He chases behind. Russian Revolution's right there in the same sort of mould, going to be tracking. You don't know. She's what's the Gold Slipper winner? She's our reign. She will reign. Who the hell knows what she's going to produce? She's a wild card. But I'd be against her, honestly, just from history and looking what she's like. But her ratings mark is even on an adjusted basis for weight. From the 2-year-old races, puts her probably about 2 lengths roughly behind Vega Magic. So that's achievable, but she needs to really have gone to another level.
Well, she needs to come back as good.
And then improve.
And then actually improve off that. So
I think there was a lot of excuses for a lot of 2-year-olds in that series, the Golden Slipper sort of lead-up series.
Might be a length to 2 lengths off. Maybe.
Yeah, so it's achievable. But she needs to come back and prove herself. And
how often do we see the 2-year-olds not come back?
Yeah, and she's tried well, but it's just, I hope she does. I hope for the sake of the race, I really hope she goes to a new level, because it is such an exciting race trying to line up Golden Slipper winners. Horses like Vega Magic, who have just exploded into the sprinting scene in their last couple of starts, like Brave Smashers, bloody Redzel
seems better than ever.
Yeah, Russian Revolution coming out of another form line. Then you've got Menari coming in as a 3-year-old that's gone on from his great 2-year-old campaign where he had no luck, and then it's just trying to work it out. And then they're talking about putting Caravaggio back on a plane after running well in a race on Sunday, I believe, in the UK. So it's just, who knows what the heck's going to happen in the next few weeks. It is exciting. I didn't think I'd be this excited about the race, and it's not a race looking to bet up in or anything like that, but it's just an interesting race to try and dissect.
It's a great concept, it'll be a great spectacle, no doubt.
It's worked far better than I ever believed it would, and good on them for throwing, having to throw up the stumps and getting all these big owners involved, and it looks like it's going to really work.
Okay, so that's about it for this week. You can find us on Twitter at TPAOZ for the Punters Academy. Paul at thepuntersacademy.com.au is your email point for questions. John, you can find John at racingwatch.com.au. John offers a Sydney service for those interested. And myself, Paul Daly, at ratingstowin.com.au. And we are primarily, as you know, Australia's leading database provider of accurate and verified data. So that's a little plug for the end of the show, and look forward to chatting next week. Once again, if you can try and keep your questions and get them in early rather than late, it gives us time to prepare. Monday's obviously a busy morning for both of us.
Yeah.
Reviews, and you obviously off the weekend with jockey bookings and so forth.
Under attack, but it's good, and it's good fun doing this. So the more chance we have to prepare, the better it is for everyone, pretty much. So it's good. It's good. And thanks, guys.
Cheers, guys.